So yesterday I was trying to get these bumper wings fixed and completed using the Smittybilt Stinger bar that I purchased. And in the middle of getting them cut and fabricated and trying to get the angles right, my spacers came. And that was a little bit more important to get the wheels and lift done on this thing. So I completed a whole video yesterday that I'm going to be posting up online, and it's basically using your existing Johnson rods to give you a lift. I will show you how to do that in the video that's going to be following this. So let's get to it. All right, guys, so we're here underneath the LR at the rear wheel, and I just removed the rear Johnson rod. And the whole idea about getting this lift going up here, so right now my truck is in off-road height, and that's going to be approximately where I want my lift anyways. Now what you're going to have to do here is you want to get that arm approximately level, and that is basically how you're going to trick the computer into thinking that it's in regular mode when it's actually an off-road mode. And you get that extra height. So the cool thing about this and using the gap tool is that I can, even though these are twisted, these are the front Johnson rods, even though these are twisted, I could straighten these out and install them on the back and dial it in with the gap tool, and that essentially takes care of the rear without having to buy a new Johnson rod. It gets pretty close. Now, mind you, this is closer to the 2.5 inch lift, which I'm okay with. That's why I'm eventually going to be making a adjustable rod, just so that I can dial it in properly and not worry so much about my CV angle. But this is a quick and easy way to do it, and then I'm going to figure out a quick way to reuse, hopefully, the front Johnson, the rear Johnson rods, cut these a little bit shorter so that they'll work on the front. So again, this is just sort of an easy getaway to do this, but I would only suggest doing this if you have a gap tool to dial it in, because this is going to raise and lower depending on where you set the gap values at, based on using this as a rear lift Johnson rod. Okay, so let me get this installed and I'll show you exactly what I mean. All right, guys, so we're here at the back again, and there is the front Johnson rod installed on the rear ride height sensor. And you can see it's twisted because the front rods are 90 degrees to each other, the holes are. And while that ride height sensor is not parallel with the ground, it's actually pretty close. I mean, I believe when I turn on the vehicle after everything, all the fuses are put back in, it will give me a fairly good lift on the rear just using the front Johnson rods. So again, this is right now is just an idea, because I can still dial this in with a gap, so that I know where the vehicle is going to sit with the tires that I've got on here. I can't tell you guys how awesome the gap tool is for doing this. It's a must. That way you can just dial everything in how you want it, not worry about it, and then go get aligned. Because if you're not happy with it, and then you go get aligned, and then you want to make some adjustments, well, guess what? You got to go get an alignment again. And that's kind of a pain in the ass to do. So just as a PSA, when you're under here working on the car, taking off Johnson rods, it is a really good idea to pull the fuses and put jack stands on both sides, because you do not want this thing auto leveling while you're underneath here. All right, so let's see what we can do with the other ones and then get this thing done. All right, so now we are here at the front. Okay, and the Johnson rod is removed. As I mentioned before, I removed it and installed it in the rear, and you can see that again from center to center, when you want this thing at your height, again, I'm in off-road height, so this thing is already lifted, and I've got a jack stand on there so it holds its position, and the fuses are pulled so it's not going to lower. So basically all I need to do here, see if I can do this with 2 hands, is get measured from center to center, which is about, I believe, 2 1/4 inches from center to center, and that will hold its position. All right, so now we need to figure out how to shorten this rear Johnson rod to 2 1/4 inches center to center. And what I figured out is that basically if I take off this rubber piece and butt them right up against each other, guess what? It's right at 2 1/4. So basically what the Johnson rod is from the factory is it's a plastic piece that is press fit into this rubber end. And if you actually just work it loose, slowly and carefully, because this is brittle, I figured out the hard way that if you're not careful with it, it'll split. But once you get it worked loose, these things come right off. And it's just held in by like a sort of ribbed stem here and press fit in there. So now you get both those ends off and figure out a way to connect these two for a shortened rod. For the front, you need to be 90 degrees to it. And you have now shortened your Johnson rod to lift the front end. And the way I'm going to do that is actually I'm just going to cut a threaded stem and go ahead and insert it in there. And it's actually in there pretty solid, so this won't move. And pull this one out, and now I have a shortened Johnson rod. So you're probably going to have to cut, I think this is like 3/4 of an inch that it needs to go inside there. And you now have a shortened Johnson rod. So that's how you do that, guys. Okay, so we got it turned on, and take a look. Now this is what happened. It jacked itself up too high on the rear. Okay, and this is in normal ride height mode. Now the reason it jacked it up on this is because I had actually set the gap tool ride heights at max. So now all I need to do is lower it to the height that I need it to be at, and we should be a little bit more level. So, all right, guys, so here I have the gap tool up and running, and it's a little bit sped up so you can kind of see what's going on here. And basically I am just using the calibration setting to adjust the ride heights now to what I need it to be. Prior to me installing the Johnson rods, I maxed out my lift, which was, the value was probably about 250. And that was obviously too high by the time I actually got the new Johnson rods in. So now I'm trying to dial it in. Started with 220, as you see here, and that was too high still. So now I'm going down to 180. And as soon as I set that value, I basically just upload it to the vehicle, and the vehicle lets out its compressor fart and drops it down. And that is the benefit of having a gap tool to dial it in. So there we go. Our Johnson rod lift is semi-complete because I haven't gotten my new tires on there, rims and tires on there yet. But as you can see, it was a little bit less higher than it was before because I just made the adjustments, and I'll do a screenshot of that, me using the gap tool to manually adjust it. Worried about spacers, buy the right ones. Simple as that. It's really important that you have either hub centric or lug centric with the acorns. So basically this is both, because this one's specifically for the Land Rover. So the bore size here fits, and it'll center your wheel. If you were going lug centric, what you'll notice is that when you tighten these down, the socket itself might not line up properly in here, and when you start to tighten it, you'll see it center itself in the whole entire system. So that's really important for having a good wheel connection to the hub using spacers. The other thing is, because we've got dissimilar materials here, aluminum with steel, I like to apply some anti-seize lubricant, not on the threads, but in between the surfaces. Oops, sorry, in between the surfaces, not on the threads. And that prevents these two from fusing together once it gets wet, and things start breaking down. So that is just a word on setting up spacers and what kind of spacers to get. Chromey, chromey, chrome. They're not going to stay that way. There's no way. Can't hang with the chrome. But look at the difference. With the lift and filling out the wheel wells. Good God. And there she is. Wider stance, taller lift, bigger tires, 34 to be exact. There's a lot of cutting that needs to be done to get those tires to fit, but I will not show that just because it all depends on your offset, size tire, etc., etc. But it was a lot of cutting to get this to fit, and it's still rubbed, so I'm not done. But basically, these chrome rims are going to get painted black, and we will be on to the next step of fabbing the bumpers and getting those fit. So thank you very much.